Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the show where members of Team MagicJank get together and talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. My name's Graham, go by Hammox42 on the internet, and today I'm joined by Damien F16. Damien, how's it going, man?
It's going great. It's almost the weekend. We're recording on a Friday here. There's a new set coming out in what, a week or two. So we're gonna have a week, I guess, will be pre-release. Yeah.
Yeah.
So lots of new stuff to talk about. So I'm great. I'm loving life right now. How about you? How's how's everything?
I'm right there with you. I mean, this set looks like it's going to be explosive. I'm seeing a lot of power in what we've seen so far from the main set. I know we talked a lot in last week's show about spoilers, so we're going to touch, we might talk if there are any cards that strike your fancy as we're going. But today I want to focus primarily on the big score sheet because we didn't touch on that at all last time around. But I'm excited. This set looks to be exactly the kind of thing that I like. The number of like weird combos and I dare you build arounds in this set are just through the roof. So yeah, well, I'm gonna have to get to brewing here fast.
For constructed, I like to the limited environment's gonna be great. This is a Dave Humphries set, which is, if you know Dave Humphries, the set designer, he's done a lot of other fan favorite sets and stuff. He did Neon Dynasty, he did Kaldheim, he did I don't know, a few other. He loves to put really good mana fixing in the sets that he designs. So having dual lands at common is awesome. The set's going to be super juiced up. I mean, what you just said, Ham, for those of you who don't know how this set is going to operate, there are essentially an extra 30 or, well, 40 cards, but 30 of them are rare or mythic rare. Or 30 of them are mythic? Are they all mythic? I don't know. But they are being injected into the set. So there's a huge, number of cards, first of all, in this set, way more than we normally get. And then a lot more rares than we would normally get. So it's going to make for a really interesting limited environment. But for constructed, it's going to be one of the most powerful sets we've seen in the last few years. It would have been like they put Mom and Aftermath together in one set, in one pack. So it's a lot of power, really juiced up set, tons of mythic rares. It should be cool. It should be paradise for people who love to deck build around this stuff. So we could jump in and talk about some of these cards if you want.
100%. But so that's exactly what's happening. Well, and it's funny because it sounds like, if Mom and Aftermath were together, that almost sounds like some kind of weird utopian, maybe not utopian or dystopian, I don't know, whatever, but of a weird kind of bizarro world reality. But that is effectively what happened here. They designed an epilogue set. They designed a set designed to follow Thunder Junction, but the Mom Aftermath set sold apparently very poorly, which, I mean, an undraftable set with 5-card boosters at the same price as regular set, people weren't super stoked about that. It's crazy. Who knew?
It's unfortunate. It's such a good limited set too. It was one of the great limited sets of the last few years was Mom. It was fantastic. So unfortunate, but so
Aftermath being just kind of this weird thing that was just sort of there. They tried something different with the release and it wasn't received particularly well. So they're not doing it again.
Exactly.
But as a result, they have this 30-card set that was just kind of hanging out, and so they just smashed it into the regular one. And so it's just here too. And hopefully the limited environment is still fun. Would March of the Machine be as good if, Ob Nixilis Captive Kingpin was in the limited environment? I don't know.
Very good question.
So maybe not. We'll see. And all 30 cards that are on the big score bonus sheet are mythics. And so, all of you free-to-play arena players who don't have any rare wild cards that are sitting on a huge stockpile of mythics, congratulations. Now's a great opportunity to use up some of those. And those of you like me who are out of mythics, my condolences. I'm right there with you. Let's make this happen.
No pity for you, Ham. You're a degenerate deck builder. Of course you don't have mythics. What, are you kidding me?
Absolutely not.
If there are mythics in the house, they're gone overnight. Ham, you come downstairs at midnight. He's eating all the. All
right. Exactly. That's exactly it, man. Yeah, midnight. Exactly. Got anything to craft? Got any mythics I can craft? How about? So the craft singles and the 8-drop creatures that nobody's playing. I need those. Yeah, absolutely.
Got to reanimate something.
Of course.
Reanimate something.
Yeah, always.
However, it does introduce a kind of weird dynamic here, and that is to do, of course, with these mythics being injected and the play boosters. The structure, the I don't know, the texture of the booster, for lack of a better term, has changed, right? We have play boosters now. We have more rare wild slots. They're changing again this time. So the packs are going to have a 20% chance of one of the commons being one of these cards from the list. So the list is actually the big score cards plus another 10 special guest cards, right? So it's a 1 in 40 chance of getting a specific mythic. So it's going to be really interesting mashing this together. I think initially a lot of people are like, wow, this is going to be great. More rares, more good. Packs are going to be worth more, what have you. But my concern here, as we go over some of these very powerful cards they're putting in this big score vault or whatever, if there are any real standouts that see a lot of play in competitive constructed, whether it's standard or pioneer or what have you, and they are like, if there's a mythic from the big score, this kind of the list or whatever I guess you call it, if one of those cards sees play as a 4 of in one of the best decks in standard, it's going to be a ridiculously overpriced card in real life. This is one of the things I hear a lot of people murmuring, going, oh boy, like there's a lot of powerful cards here, as we just said. What are the odds one or two of them breaks out in standard? Well, pretty likely, or I don't know, maybe like it's not bad odds. So that's going to be scary. We might have $100 plus card in standard again very soon because of a set like this. The last time they did this was Nexus of Fate. I don't know if you remember that ridiculous card.
I wasn't playing in standard at the time, but I've heard so many horror stories about it. Yeah. And
it was expensive, because it was not in a pack. You had to get get it a different way. So we'll see. I'm hearing a lot of murmurings about the odds of opening some of these cards, and it's sounding kind of bleak. So we'll see. I hope it all works out. But
we're seeing that to a lesser extent right now on the casual space with Voja or Voha, however that's pronounced. The wolf is only available from pre-release kits of Murders of Carlisle Manor, and it's a 1 in 3 hit, and so that's a rare one. But even then, we're only talking about commander players who specifically want that card, and it's already like $40-$50 card, and depending on. So, and that's just casual, and in commander, everything is optional, and you only need one if you're going to do it.
Yeah,
and then
you only need one.
If something becomes very strong in standard, you're gonna need 4 or 3 or whatever, but you're gonna need multiples. And if they're a limited quantity, if there's a limited supply, that's gonna that could get bad fast. So we'll see.
Basically, the mythic and rare pool is very diluted right now. There's a massive number of mythics and rares, like just a huge range of them. So getting any one particular mythic or rare is gonna be a lot, and so. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I've heard murmurings. I know Ari Lax on the Dominaria podcast, the Dominaria's Judgment, they were talking about this, and they said, I think he said something like 1 in 30 collector boosters is your odds of hitting one specific card based on adding up all the various chances in these different slots and how many cards you could hit potentially and all this stuff. And this is based off 17 lands data and previous set data that we already have. We've seen this kind of stuff in other sets. So I don't, but nobody actually knows for sure. And this is Wizards. So what they say might not actually be the case. Many people they've said packs are going to be like this or that. And then you open them and it's like, whoa, like some master sets were so ridiculously weirdly collated. There was like the same foil. Every foil in the box was the same common foil.
Right.
And like weird stuff like this happens. So anyway, this should be interesting. It's going to be a crazy set. There's a lot of powerful stuff. I don't know. I hope there's no $100 plus cards in standard. We go back to Jace the Mind Sculptor days, because playing with $1,000 standard deck, that is accomplishing the opposite of what they're trying to do here, which is make standard cheaper by extending the rotation. And so, let's jump in and see if there's any that are going to break the bank here. I don't know.
Right. So they're going to be. So this booster is going to be one of the more complicated boosters that we've seen in a little bit. And so there are going to be 3 different set symbols that folks are going to see. You're going to see the main set symbol, which is just the cowboy hat. That's one that we see all over the place. Standard legal. We all know how this works. Great. There's also going to be the breaking news treatment. This is the series of reprints that has the kind of the newspaper style. Now, these are going to be legal in draft, and frankly, they're going to be insane. There are a lot of absolute bombs that, honestly, a lot of them needed reprints anyway for older formats. But like this set has Reanimate, it has Mana Drain, it has Mind Break Trap, a lot of like really classic, powerful cards. I also find this particular this particular art treatment interesting because it's meant to look like a crumpled up newspaper. So they're printing cards that are meant to look creased. that
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
cool.
bugs me, if I'm honest. But
So my issue, I like the style, like yeah, that old newspaper
but it is
style.
a neat
But
aesthetic,
I get the
absolutely.
creasing. I didn't even think about that. You're right. The like the pre-creased.
Like the
It's like
corner looks
those
folded. It's like, ugh.
yeah, you're
Anyway.
paying $2,000 for a pair of Balenciaga jeans that are pre-worn and whatever. It's like okay, but my issue with them is they actually look like washed out to me, and it was the same issue I had with with Karlov Manor with the case files treatment. They all look like white cards basically. Like these
Right.
all look like that's a black card. Reanimate? Are you
Yes,
kidding? That if I had that in my deck, I'd be like, it looks like a Swords to
it
Plowshares.
does.
I
Yeah.
don't know. So it's very weird, but they're cool. I don't know. I like them experimenting. I love the font. I think there's a lot going on that I
Hmm.
like, the title and everything. I don't know. It's a weird looking card. There's two titles, the Prosperity Post and then Reanimate.
Right.
It's not a
Well,
not a lot of room for the art. Yeah.
it definitely looks like a better take. I mean, if you compare this to like the Amonkhet Invocations, we're looking at two
Yeah.
attempts at a very stylistic border, and I feel like this hits way better. It's easier to read. It
Agreed.
presents the information without really taking away from the card. I do agree that like the coloring could have been a little different from color to color, and that would have maybe served it a little
Yeah.
bit better for the at a glance reviewing, or maybe make the mana symbols in the corner slightly larger. Maybe that would have helped. I don't know, but
Yeah. Something like that.
these are little nitpicks. At the end of the day, these are cool
You're
cards.
right.
It's
They're
neat.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I like them
yeah,
experimenting with different art styles and stuff. So yeah,
100%.
those are cool.
But yeah, so these are going to be available. We're going to get, some number of those in the kind of that bonus slot. So we're going to see that. But then there's also going to be what are called the big score treatments. And this is a different set symbol completely. Normal frame, the normal modern frame. But the set symbol is a vault door, like a bank vault door, which also, as everyone is keen to point out online, looks shockingly like a USS like Starfleet ship from the top.
Starship Enterprise.
It looks very much
Yeah.
like the Starship Enterprise as seen from above. You can't unsee it when you see it. It's there. But these are all mythics. There are 30 of them, as we were saying, and these will be standard legal. And there are a couple of reprints in here. So we do have a few kind of notable reprints, but nothing quite on the same level as you see in the breaking news cards.
Yeah.
But these are going to be standard legal. It's the Aftermath set. So we do have, cards like Rest in Peace, Grand Abolisher, and Torpor Orb, which are good cards for a lot of older formats. Like if I'm not mistaken, they do see play in modern in some shells. So okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like that, welcome reprint. Do we think these cards are going to have any impact in standard necessarily?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think so. They're all very narrow cards here.
Mhm.
Torpor Orb, Rest in Peace, and Grand Abolisher. These are three very narrow sideboard cards that come in very specific matchups against very specific decks. So, will they see play in standard? We already have effects like this Torpor Orb. We've got the new Thrall, the 2-mana white 1/2 flying flash.
Oh, yep.
He ETBs and does the same
The
thing.
Doorkeeper
So
Thrall. Yep. Yep.
yeah, Doorkeeper. He also hits creatures and artifacts, right? This is only
Mm-hmm.
creatures, so it is colorless. So I guess sure, if you're not a white deck, maybe you play Torpor Orb, but I mean, Torpor Orb is interesting. I think it could see play. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it's obviously it's a powerful effect, but yeah, I agree that the Thrall does 90% of what this does, and you have the gotcha ability to hit him with flash, which is
Yeah.
always nice. But then you also have things like Tashanda's Tidebinder, where
Yes.
it only hits once, but holy cow, like it hits when you
It's
need
all
it
you
to.
need.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, it hits once, but then it does shut off the thing. Like
Mhm.
I've beaten Mono Red just shutting off their Forge, and then they're like, oh my god, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, or they're yeah. So it's interesting. These may see a little bit of play, but for the most part, they're going to be very low impact. They're a
Yeah.
couple little sideboard slots here and there, and that's it.
Yep.
Rest in Peace, same thing. We have all that overlap already in Graveyard Hate. So
Yeah, graveyards. People have been hating on graveyards very, very efficiently right now. So yeah,
yeah,
that's another way to do
standard's
it.
big.
Yeah.
Now after rotation, maybe we could talk, but
Yeah, exactly. After rotation, we're going to see things like Hearse and Graveyard Trespasser, some of that stuff leaving. So maybe then all of a sudden the demand might increase a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you on these. I think they're powerful cards. They're good. But I think commander players who want these, great. Like now's a good
Yeah.
time to scoop them up while the price is low. So that's kind of
some
where
of them
we're
are
at.
already legal. Like Rest in Peace is legal already in Pioneer. Same
Mhm.
with Grand Abolisher, I think is legal in Pioneer. I don't know about Torpor Orb. When's the last time they reprinted that? I know it's
That's
from
a good
Scars
question.
of Mirrodin, I think originally, but Anyway, but yeah, we all have effects like that already in Standard and Pioneer. So these are interesting, great. You know, maybe some of them were kind of expensive for some reason. I'm not even sure. Abolisher.
I feel like it's been a while since we've seen a Grand Abolisher print outside of, you know, super exclusive, you know, secret layer ones and whatnot. So
and he was rare, right? In the core set. I remember when he came out, he was a rare, and now he's a mythic.
I believe it.
But
yeah.
Anyway,
I believe it.
Anyway,
but yeah,
let's get to some new stuff.
Let's get to some new stuff. Oh, absolutely.
Some fresh meat.
All right, so there are some absolute. I personally think there's some real bangers in the Big Score set. So let's get into it, and I want to start.
Yeah.
If I can. Yeah, there we go. With Molten Duplication. So this is a red card. So if anybody out there enjoys the Reflection of Kiki Jiki or Splinter Twin style effects, this
bring back Splinter Twin.
100% unbanned Splinter Twin. I completely agree. It's funny too when you read Splinter Twin and even understanding how the combo works. You know, when you compare it to the stuff people are doing nowadays, you know, it's like, is it really that bad? I think it'd be fine. Anyway, but yes, so bring back Splinter Twin. But in the meantime, we have this to hold us over. So Molten Duplication, it's a sorcery for 1 and a red. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So what do we think of this thing?
Well, it's cheap. First, you know, this is what makes or breaks every card is casting cost is king. So it's 2 mana, great. That's a sweet spot. That means a lot of decks can play it. It's not double red. It's 1 red, 1 colorless. Easy to fit into a lot of decks. Cheap, fits in on the curve, basically wherever you want it. You can combine this with other stuff easily. It's just like Galvanic Iteration. You know, those kind of cards have to be cheap because you need to play them in conjunction with something else usually to have, you know, a big thing happen. It's sorcery speed, so a little bit, you know, if it was instant, it would almost be too good probably, like instant speed clone. This is a clone for 2 mana. Let's just put our cards on the table. That's what this is. And normally we pay 4 mana for a clone. You know, a 2 mana clone is like Phantasmal Image, which is very fragile and just dies to everything. This is you know, this dies by itself at the end of the turn, but if you can copy something huge for 2 mana, that's pretty powerful. The fact that this doesn't exile itself either means you can easily flash it back off a bunch of different stuff. There's a 4 mana artifact with Prototype that comes in and casts something for 2 or less for free. There's I think there's a couple of cards that can do that kind of thing. So you can even recur this, you know, a blue-red shell I'm envisioning where you're copying spells, your cat likes it.
She does, yeah. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Flashing them back and stuff, you know? You can do that because this is cheap enough and it doesn't exile itself, which is a big deal. A lot of those really powerful effects tend to exile themselves, so you can't abuse them. But it'll be interesting. What do you think? Do you have an idea where this could go? I don't know.
You know, I like this, and I like all the points that you just made. I mean, in reality, if I'm spending 2 mana and I'm cloning a decent 3-drop threat and getting some kind of value off of it, I'm thinking... I mean, honestly, one of the things I'm thinking of is, you know, good 3-drop, 4-drop threats. That's really where I want to be, and non-legendary ideally. So if I'm in a blue-red kind of shell, being able to copy like a Haughty Djinn, have 2 of those down for a turn, that could deliver a lot of punishment pretty quickly. Or
that's
if you're
GG.
Right, and if you're in one of those, you know, maybe Monastery Mentor, making a second one of those, following it up with some other cheap spell because this only costs 2. That kind of a situation could be pretty damaging for an opponent. You can the amount of power that this could potentially give you in a shell that could support it. I wouldn't be surprised if some kind of Spellslinger Prowess deck could find a spot for 2 of these in Standard, if such a deck can exist, which it hasn't been. You know, those decks haven't really taken off too much. I mean, there have been a couple but I don't know. Maybe this this can give them an edge.
One of the big reasons those decks haven't taken off in Standard is because the mana sucks, and now they have Spire Bluff Canal. I'm not kidding. That land by itself is going to make that blue-red deck suddenly an archetype in Standard. I think now that's the big piece that was missing, because that deck is a low-to-the-ground aggro deck. It's just like Boros. Boros is going to get so much better with Inspiring Vantage. It's better than any rare or mythic they could have picked up. They've already got the curve full of the best stuff already. Like, they didn't even need... Getting that land was better than almost everything else they could have gotten. So Spire Bluff Canal being in the format means blue-red is very much suddenly a real deck. And I guess, I don't know. I think probably people think I'm exaggerating, but that's how important those lands are, the fast lands. And you guys talked about this. We don't have to,
But you're right. And it bears
true.
repeating. These are huge. This is absolutely huge. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
So no, I
very,
think
very good.
that is a great call out because you're right. Like that already boosts this archetype, and we're in a situation where we have
Yeah.
Monastery Swiftspear. You know, we have we have a lot of good
Malcolm, Fairy Mastermind, like
Yep.
all the threats, all the
stuff.
cheap threats. You could go artifact based. I've even seen people, this is on the arena ladder, just goofing around, but there are people playing blue-red pirates decks that are based around like a pirates. There's that 2-drop who looks at the top 4, puts a pirate or artifact in your hand is very good, and then the 3-mana
Breaches.
I keep thinking, thank you, Breaches. I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
say
the goblin.
Squee,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's not Squee. It's the other one. Yeah. And things like that. Yeah, so Spire Bluff's a huge pickup. Now, this is a different... Molten Duplication would go in something totally different, but the point is blue-red spells, spell slingers, like what you're talking about, totally viable now. So yeah, watch out for that.
Yeah, could be a thing. So yeah, no, I think you're dead on. This is looking good. Cool.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So next up, I want to talk about a card that's a little controversial, and I want to get our take on it. So Lost Jite. So it's Jite. They said the secret word, let's we got all freak out. So and the art is even reminiscent of Umezawa's Jite. It looks the main art is formatted exactly the same way, where the hand is holding up the Jite, looking like it's in the middle of battle, and it's this very, I don't know, very artistic
symbolic
kind of
weapon.
Yeah,
100%. People recognize it immediately. Like, I didn't a Jite. What the hell is that?
Right.
It looks almost like a sai from Raphael, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's missing one of its like prongs. It's such a weird weapon.
Yeah,
but
it is.
This one? It's got a huge shoes to fill, right? Is this one as good as the other one? Everybody thinks what? No, right? I mean, it can't. It's not even close.
No, it can't. So There's no way.
Yeah. Is it good enough?
Yeah, so we'll read it out here, but let's not bury the lead. They will never print an equipment that is as powerful as Jite. Like, they will never print another Jite. They will never print another Skull Clamp. They will never print another Lightning Greaves. I'm sorry, everyone. They just won't. They will reprint the old ones from time to time in special products, but they will not give us those. Lost Jite, however, this is a 1-drop. So that's already, as far as cheap goes, and it equips for 1. So, I mean, as far as equipment goes, that's nice. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage, put 1 charge counter on Lost Jite. Yeah. That's a big difference. Umezawa's you get 2. This one you get 1. But note, it's damage of any kind. Well, it's combat damage to anyone. Whether it's a creature, planeswalker, battle, face, doesn't matter. You get it. Remove a charge counter from Lost Jite. Choose 1. Untap target land. Target creature can't block this turn, or put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature.
Yeah. To me, one of those is not like the others. One of them is very powerful. Do you know which one I'm thinking of?
Are you thinking about untapping a land? Because that's I think that's excellent as well. Yes. Ramp and colorless for cheap like this. Any deck that has creatures that want to engage in combat in one way or another can all of a sudden have access to ramp.
Somebody brought it up to me. A very sick individual in my channel. An Eldrazi Tron player. Oh god, I said it. Eldrazi Tron player. I'm sorry, but in Modern, it's a much reviled deck. However, this gets fetched by Urza's Saga, which is excellent. This untaps a Tron land, which is very excellent. So if you can fetch this up early with Urza's Saga and start getting in there with either the creature that the Saga makes or whatever, and start untapping your Tron lands, you can maybe do some... and this is where the conversation derailed. Like, I basically said, well, what are you going to do with extra mana in the Tron deck? And he was like, well, I don't know. Like, we'll have to find something. But
it's Tron. You can always get more mana, right? Just need more mana. Yeah.
That's the only place I could see something like this is because it's 1 mana. It is an equipment, so it will get fetched by Stoneforge. There is, the Hammer deck in Modern. That's not really, it's not a tier 1 deck anymore, but they wouldn't want this. I can't see a place outside of maybe Eldrazi Tron that would want something like this, but... Can you think of where, or I don't know, in Commander or other formats?
I'm a big fan of charge counters and finding places to use charge counters as a core tapper enthusiast. I definitely like all that stuff, like Power Conduit, core tapper, those Energy Chamber, that nonsense from back in the day. I love that. So finding anything where I can dump charge counters and then use them for benefits like this. It's an engine piece that could be useful in casual Commander if you're doing goofy charge counter nonsense. But even then, even something as simple as a Pentad Prism will get you almost the same effect. And that's one that, I guarantee the majority of our listeners aren't familiar with. This was from Fifth Dawn. It has charge counters. You can remove charge counters to make mana. If you can dump charge counters on it or proliferate it, it makes mana. And this is
Good ramp.
It's a perfectly fine ramp piece, but it's a this is a 5 cent uncommon that is not a significant deal, and like that's what that's the kind of role that I see the Lost GT playing. So I'm not if I crack one of these at the pre-release. Okay, neat. I'll find a place for it, but I'm not excited. I'm not losing my mind for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's the only way, or like if we're talking Commander, I mean, it's got to be the untapped target land that you're breaking to make this card worth it. So you have to be playing Nykthos, or you have to be playing Tolarian Academy, or I don't know, whatever. Like I don't know what formats we're talking. Vintage Cube. Maybe this is in Vintage Cube because it goes in the Tolarian Academy deck, or I don't know. But we're talking fringe cases here. For competitive constructed Magic, nah, I don't see it. Even in Modern, where they have Urza's Saga to fetch it up and stuff, I don't think it's good enough. But
in Limited, I think it's solid. I mean, a +1/+1 counter, or being able to remove their strongest blocker. That's not.
Sorry.
I'm not mad at that. Limited, I love this thing, but
yeah, Limited, it's good, but I mean, again, you can't beat 1 mana. Yeah, like you said.
Exactly.
But But Limited is not constructed.
No. As far as construction goes, I'll be shocked if this finds a home. I'll be glad if it does, though. I'll be kind of excited if somebody finds a way to break it, because it would be fun to watch. But yeah, I'm not sure where that is. Yeah. All right. So next up, I want to talk about another one that might have implications in older formats that I fully think will do nothing in Standard. Pest Control. It's a sorcery for white-black. Destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less. But it does have cycling too.
That's awesome. Yeah, the cycling backdoor out is so good on a card like this, because this card is narrow, right? Very, very narrow. It's, permanents. I mean, obviously against some decks it could be insane, like you said, in, old formats and stuff.
Oh, you have 100 treasure tokens. It'd be a shame if something happened to them. Yeah, that kind of thing, but yeah.
But the cycling backdoor, just letting you have that out to like, oh, I'm playing against a deck where this is dead, bam, cycle it. That's just fantastic. It is tricky to cast. White-black is weird, but 2 mana is super cheap. Again, that's the perfect kind of spot on the curve. A ton of formats, will put cards that cost this mana in their deck and either be able to cast them, with their own mana, or cheat them by casting them for free off something or what have you. But yeah, I think it's powerful. I don't play enough Vintage to know how good this is going to be in those kind of formats, but
and I think that's ultimately like Vintage, maybe Legacy, but like a format where most of the threats are 0 or 1, I think is really what you need. I personally dislike fast mana enough in Commander that this is the kind of thing I would run in my casual Commander decks, just to make those mana crypt players just really frustrated. But that like, everybody has a turn 1 Soul Ring but me. Oh, it'd be a shame if something were to happen to them. There's that, but that's it. Like in Standard, this isn't gonna see. I mean, maybe sideboard play. I mean, against Boros Convoke, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
I was gonna say that's the one deck. And Bant Toxic, like this is good against Toxic as well. Like it hits all the important things. It doesn't put counters on the Rot Priest and everything, or trigger the Rot Priest. But it's white-black, and Standard, that's a bit of a, like, Esper midrange is one of the best decks. That deck could easily play this, but I don't think that deck really cares about the Toxic deck very much. Like, they already have a decent match against the those low to the ground decks, being a mid-range deck themselves. So yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe a control deck might side this in, but again, Esper control, these kind of things aren't really big parts of the metagame in Standard right now. So I don't see it in many places in Standard, but definitely a sweet card. This is, again, great design. It's cheap enough that it goes in a bunch of stuff despite being 2 colors for 2 mana. And then it's got this really broad, powerful effect that's not going to hose a lot of decks, but against the decks that you wanted, it's going to be insane, and a good backdoor, so it's never dead. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Sideboard card. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and having cycling on it is clutch. If it didn't have that, I would dismiss this out of hand. But the fact that, you can just dump it if it's not situationally relevant, that's huge. Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I'm really glad that given how narrow this is, I'm glad it only costs 2. Because we've seen some stuff in the past where they'll have like a destroy all artifacts, like Structural Assault from New Capenna comes to mind, where it's like destroy all artifacts and then deal damage to creatures. And it's like, that's so narrow, but it costs 5. And it's like, if I'm going up against a heavy artifact deck, that could be a blowout, but it costs 5. It better be, and so that one just never saw any meaningful play. This only costing 2, definitely worth considering.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, we have, there are other sweepers that are cheapish, like 3, Temporary Lockdown and Brotherhood's End and this kind of stuff. But But 2 is a big difference. 2 versus 3 is a
Hmm.
big difference. And it being, yeah, just one of each color. And, Temp Lockdown and Brotherhood's End are both double colored. They're meant to be only played in a very heavy, white or red deck or whatever.
Yeah.
You can tell they don't want those cards to be too flexible, otherwise no good. So this one being 2, yeah, it's interesting. Again, I hope none of these cards blows up and becomes a really good sideboard
Yeah.
card or something. They're going to be expensive, but this
Yeah.
one's good. The cycling I love. I love that on every narrow card, right? Every narrow
Hmm.
card should have a, yeah.
Yeah, the meta is going to define whether or not this is playable. This is probably going to come and go. Like we're going to forget about it, and then in a couple of months, some crazy token deck is going to take off, and this is going to step in and
Yeah,
check it.
exactly.
Like yeah, it happens all the time. Well, like Hearst is a great example of that. Like Hearst didn't see any meaningful play, and then all of a sudden the teamer deck showed up, and now it's
Yeah.
like coming back again. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
going to
that's
be one
what
of
those
those.
cards are for. It's good.
100%.
Yeah, you need those pressure valves, on the format to keep things in check. But
Hmm.
what do we have
Yeah.
next here?
So let's take another.
Oh,
So next up, I want to talk about a card that if you've been on social media, while following Magic stuff in the last few days, you've probably seen this card. It is Loot, the key to everything. There's a comma in there. It's not a sentence. It's a character because
an
and
important character. You can tell because it's in the name.
yes,
Got it?
it's
All
the
right.
key to everything. So yeah,
Not,
Loot.
yeah.
Yeah, and in the story, it's Jason Vroska's like adopted child. It's a weird situation,
Oh,
but
really?
yes, that's
Okay.
actually kind of where that's going. I've read just enough to be dangerous. So yeah. But yeah, anyway, so Loot is a beast noble, and they actually found Loot in the vault, if I'm not mistaken. So actually, the big score
Yeah.
that Chase was seeking is actually this adorable little kind of Furby looking creature. And so yeah, Loot is a 1/2 for green, blue, red with ward 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of card types among other non-land permanents you control. You may play those cards this turn.
Right.
So it's compulsive draw
So
based on how much stuff you have online.
it's absolutely unplayable and we'll never see any play outside of somebody in Commander who says, I think this is the cutest
Mm-hmm.
general ever and I'm going to build around it. That's great for them.
100%.
But this card will see no play anywhere else.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting card. The lore stuff, yeah, when I saw this, I'm
Yeah.
like, what am I even looking at here? A beast? Like, what kind of. Like what is like where did this thing come from? What are we looking at here? A beast like other beasts in Magic don't look like this, so I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And a noble? Anyway.
Yeah, that is one of the weird things too. And if I'm not mistaken, the artist who designed this character actually did work on. I believe. I really hope I'm not gonna put my foot in my mouth here. I believe I saw somewhere that they worked on like League of Legends character designs, and it kind of shows because it's a little more cartoonish than a lot of what we're used to.
Yeah.
And I'm not
That's
saying that's a
cool.
bad thing necessarily. It is what it is.
Right.
But yeah,
But I
I mean,
mean,
yeah, it look if I found out that this was the same species that Teemo was in League of Legends, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that checks, that tracks.
yeah, and from a stats
Yeah,
perspective here, I mean, it's terrible. 3 mana, very difficult to cast for a 1/2. The ward
hmm
1 doesn't do any real job protecting it whatsoever. It doesn't trigger off itself. It needs
hmm
other permanents in play to trigger. Like that's
talk.
just no, no,
This is the definition
never.
of win more, isn't it? I mean, like
Yeah,
hundred
it's
percent.
completely unplayable.
Well, and on top of that, if you do have a large board with a large variety of types, I mean, you're impulsive drawing. Do you really
Yeah,
want to
aren't
be
you already
impulsive
winning?
drawing like 4 cards like that? What are you gonna do with that? Like,
And you're winning the game.
Yeah.
How many permanents do you need in play to win? You already have a bunch of different ones now. It's
yeah.
crazy.
No,
Anyway, it's
I agree.
cool. It's weird. I'm gonna be sad. People are gonna be sad when they open it as their foil borderless. In that
Hmm.
in that big score slot or whatever.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. Oh, sweet, I got a big scorecard. Oh, it's yeah. But again, I
Or
think
maybe.
a lot of people like the character, and
Yeah.
that is worth something as far as collectability and commander is concerned. But
Yeah.
honestly, if I'm playing against you on the ladder and you resolve this, I'm gonna breathe a sigh of relief because like, oh, you're
Right.
running this. Okay, great. We're gonna be fine.
And then they
Yeah,
smash you with like a super fast combo deck.
And-
The general is just for show. It's just
100%. Yep. It's gonna be one of
Um,
those, which that's fine. Yeah. If
They
you
can
do,
exist.
if you pull that off, hey, good on you. I'm not mad.
And yeah, and it's like this character in general. I'm glad this exists. It exists for somebody. Somebody out
Mhm.
there will love this, and that's great. So, but
Yep.
it has zero impact on me, and I will forget about it tomorrow. So,
Yep.
On constructed and competitive play. It's yeah.
Yeah.
But do we have anything super powerful coming up?
Ooh, we do have a
Show me
couple.
something
There,
spicy.
there are a couple of pretty good ones coming up, and there's one that I want to talk about that I think is pretty solid. That makes me happy. I don't know if it's going to make anybody else happy, but I want to touch on it. And it's a new land that we're getting, Fomori Vault. So it's a land. It enters the battlefield untapped. I need to stress that. That's huge. And it caps for colorless. So it gives you no colored mana, but okay. You can then pay 3, so there's activated ability on the battlefield. Pay 3, tap, discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, I know this is not great unless you have a decent number of artifacts already kind of on the battlefield. Otherwise, you're just discarding, and I mean, actually, if you have 0 artifacts down, you're just discarding for 0 value, which is obviously terrible. But if you have 1 down, it's a looter effectively, which I know paying 3 mana and tapping a land for a loot effect is not great. It's not, but it's also on a land. It costs you nothing other than not getting a color. On this land.
We've done that before.
That's it.
Gaia Reach Sanitarium was almost that. It's 2 mana, but loot, and I guess your opponent loots, which may even be worse. 3 mana loot? No, on a land, I think that's actually like par for the course. It's not terrible, but it's not great. But it's way worse than it would be on an actual artifact. But this is a land, like you said, not legendary, also, which is something you often see with these kinds of lands. They are legendary, which makes them really awkward to put in your deck as you want to play 4, but then so this is nice. You don't have to worry about, sacking your lands and all that stuff, like with Nykthos and other things. So how quickly can we get to 3 and 4 and 5 artifacts? I guess at 3, that's pretty good. You're looking at the top 3. You're essentially pondering every single turn. And then you're discarding a card each time, though.
Yeah, so it's almost like one of those old spell shapers where it is turning the card in your hand into whatever you want. Yeah. Or into the ponder effect. Yeah, I feel like this is one of those utility lands that merits consideration, especially if you care about discard. If you have cards with flashback, I mean, maybe you're running Madness, and we don't have much of that in Standard, but, in other formats, that could be relevant. I'm a Reanimator player, so it said discard on a land. I had to take notice. Just is what it is.
Yeah.
And
that's a different story. That's great. If you can do that, take advantage of that discard.
Yeah. So I feel like this is worth consideration. Because, it's non-legendary, so that's a great shout, and it enters untapped. I think as a result, that's... If you don't have heavy color requirements in your deck, or in any kind of deck that's running Collector's Vault already, I would consider running a couple of these as well. Because they kind of feed off each other, and this gives you phenomenal selection once your graveyard's loaded to help you find those Reenact the Crimes, or the Lich Knight's Conquest, if you're doing that crazy nonsense like I like to do. This could help tee up that deck beautifully. So if you have artifacts already, treasure tokens, that kind of thing, this could help pretty dramatically.
Yeah, that's what people forget. They think artifacts like artifact cards, but then you remember, God, there are so many ways to make artifact tokens, from food to treasure to blood to clues to, there's like a million ways to make artifacts. So yeah, this is valuable. I think it's only good enough if you are taking advantage of the discard. Like you said, if you're reanimating, reenact the crime, or whatever your cruelty of GX, I don't know. Whatever you're doing in standard, squirming emergence maybe.
There you go.
Those decks need to play a certain number of discard outlets. And if you just get a free one with your land, then it just frees up spell slots. You just get to, now I can play more of this other thing that, will shore up this matchup or whatever it is, or make this other thing more redundant. So I go off quicker or what have you. So having the land, but I think that's where you need this land for it to be good enough. You need it to be doing more than just looting. You need to be taking advantage of that discard, I think. So yeah, we'll see. I could see some decks picking it up though. I love playing even in standard, the blue-black breach, reenact deck that we were talking about before. I know you wrote an article about, which was awesome.
I'm a big fan of that deck. I've been playing a lot of it.
It's awesome.
It's so good.
And Squirming Emergence is another one, which is great. But even the Teamer Fireballs deck, I mean, that's a weird, that deck is an anomaly because the mana base is so oddly specific. Like, it has to play basics. It can't play any other non-basic lands.
Right.
Like, even people, I was playing a Titania in that deck. And people are like, why aren't you playing Argoth? I'm like, Argoth? Nobody needs Argoth. What? No,
Yeah.
no. You don't need. Titania's in here for the aggro matchup to gain life. I'm not making
Yep.
some giant tree folk. Argoth doesn't get fetched by any of the Capenna basics. Argoth doesn't tap for triple mana with a Virtue Strength. There's a million reasons that land is bad.
100%.
And you look at those mana bases, they're weird, right? They are all basics and all tri-lands. So this land, I mean, that's why it would be kind of a stretch in that deck, but other graveyard-based decks, I could see it. Maybe a 1 of or 2, yeah.
Yeah, the opportunity cost is very low on this one. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So earlier I made the joke when we were talking about the GTA that we said the secret word. Well, there's another secret word, of course, that Magic players lock onto, and that's Lotus. They're giving us a card that has Lotus in the name. As content creators, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on it. Lotus Ring.
They've got to be. Yeah. They've got to be careful with that word. So they are being careful here.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us what it does?
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
So it's an equipment for 3, and it equips for 3. So that is already a pretty heavy cost, but it itself is indestructible. An equipped creature gets +3/+3, and has vigilance, and tap, sacrifice this creature, add 3 mana of any one color.
I'm sensing a theme here. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3.
Yes.
Yes.
And so it can turn a creature into a Black Lotus, but you have to pay an equip cost of 3.
That's a steep cost. So
give it 3 mana back.
It's weird. It's so weird that the ring doesn't sacrifice itself. Like I would think the ring would explode or sacrifice and you generate mana. The ring eats you.
Yes.
The ring destroys you. This is the one ring. This is the ring. This is what it should have done. It's indestructible. It sacks the creature that puts it on. That's what the ring was supposed to be from Lord of the Rings. So this is Lotus Ring, and it's way too expensive. 3 mana to cast. It doesn't do anything when it ETBs. It just 3 mana. Now you have an artifact that's indestructible. 3 to equip is steep. If it was 1 to equip, is that too busted? I guess because you're generating 3 mana, any less than 3 to equip would mean an infinite, right? So they just want you to never be able to do that. So in the end, it's just so fair that it's never good. It's not going to be good enough. It just can't be. You can't net mana with this. I
think that's the bottom line. It's far too fair. Now the +3/+3 is meaningful, but that feels like, however many times that we've seen a creature that has a really cool ability on it, but it happens to be a 6-drop, and so they made it like a 5/5 just to make sure that we can't play it at a reasonable time. This strikes me as that +3/+3 is enough of a power jump to justify the cost and make it unplayable. Because if they took the stats off of it completely, what I would have loved to see here is everything as it is, except take the +3/+3 off completely, keep it equipped 3, have its casting cost be 0.
Yeah, okay. Something like that would be cool.
And then it's a little bit closer to the Black Lotus because it's free to cast, but you have to pay 3 to equip it. And then you could, so you could I guess it could generate enough mana. You could do infinite equips if you have creatures down, but I don't know. There's probably combo potential in that if they were to do it that way. But even then, if you have enough creatures, this could still already do that. I don't know. I
think the flavor, they wanted 3, 3, 3, 3 on everywhere on the card, and it just ends up making it unplayable. Because like you said, if it costs 0, then maybe. But again, 0 mana artifacts, regardless of what they do, they have to be very careful about. It's just free spells are bad. I think we all know that. I've spoken about this before on this very podcast. Free spells are bad, so yeah, they just can't print because pure steel paladin decks would be busted or whatever. Sure. I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess in decks where you have things like Astor, where creatures can equip or any equipment can be equipped 1, Kemba, where cats entering can free equip. I don't know. There's probably, there's enough free equip shenanigans out there that, Colossus Hammer is modern playable. So equip 3, we'll figure it out. Yeah, but no, I'm inclined to agree. I think it feels like there should be combo potential here, but I just feel like all those little knobs, I know that you often like to talk about, they're just turned up a little too high. They needed to be dialed back. The costs needed to be dialed back just a little bit to put it in the sweet spot.
So it doesn't come close to its predecessors, basically.
Not even, nope.
Lotus,
not even a little bit.
Lotus Petal, Lotus Black Lotus, of course, and none of them.
Well, and then we have, Gilded Lotus, Timeless Lotus, Nyx Lotus.
I've cast a Gilded Lotus or 2 in standard and competitive decks way back in the day, but very rarely.
Well,
But
yet
yeah.
if they made Gilded Lotus nowadays, I bet it would come in tapped.
You think so? Maybe. I
Probably.
don't know how.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
it'd be
one of the things that
interesting.
makes Gilded Lotus so good, is that
Mhm.
you spend 5 mana on it and then it just refunds 3 right away. So
Right.
if you can use it, great. But anyway,
Yeah,
but yeah, no,
yeah. We're off topic.
yeah, that
Lotus.
is off topic. But at the end of the day, when it comes to other Lotuses, this feels just. It just feels weak. I have complete faith that there's going to be some crazy commander players who figure out a weird infinite loop with it. I'm sure that exists out there, but it's going to revolve around 5 cards, and one of them is going to be an uncommon from the dark or something. It's just like I don't know.
Yeah.
As far as like actual competitive viability, I don't see it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Although actually now I'm trying to. Now I'm wondering if it can help me cast Portal to Phyrexia by giving me that one-time boost. I don't know.
I just
it
love
almost
the
feels
flavor
good.
part. This ring consumes you to generate mana. It consumes the wearer. That is crazy. That is a weird ring.
I do wonder if maybe in Vision, this was a design that somebody wrote up for the One Ring. I wonder if that was like kicked around and they were like, "This is such a cool thing. We need to use it somewhere." Yeah, I don't know. Just maybe. All right. So so we got a couple other cards that I want to talk about, and then I mean, if there are any specific ones that are on your mind that we didn't get to, then by all means. But
Oh yeah.
As a Reanimator enthusiast, I have to talk about the gigantic green monster that they're bringing in Vault-Born Tyrant. So this is a 6/6 trampler for 5 green. Whenever Vault-Born Tyrant or another creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life and draw a card. When Vault-Born Tyrant dies, if it's not a token, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So it's the dinosaur so nice, you get to do it twice. Which,
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
The thing where it dies and becomes a copy of itself is so nuts because it doesn't exile itself either. It goes to the graveyard. You can reanimate this again, and then it dies again, makes a copy of it again. Oh my god!
Yeah, and you draw a card every time it hits.
Powerful.
Yeah, you gain life and draw a card every time that happens. Yeah.
The 7 mana club is a very, very exclusive club, Ham. As you know, only the finest 7 drops make it in. So we have one of the finest ever printed already in Standard in Atraxa the Grand Unifier. Atraxa Grand Unifier? Yes, know that. But, and, other big things. You could ramp into Breach, the multiverse. Another insane haymaker. Itali's in the format and on and on. So how does this guy stack up? Does the Dino get in the club with the other 7 drops? Is it as good as some of the other 7 drops? I mean, Titan of Industry doesn't even see any play anymore, My boy, T. They did him dirty. Atraxa came along. No more Titans. That's it.
Nope.
Even Itali, kind of done. Atraxa is just the one you always want to reanimate. So
yeah. Well, and as somebody who's been facing down that decision after hitting a Breach the Multiverse, do I grab my Itali or do I grab my Atraxa? The answer is Atraxa every time. It just is.
It always is.
I've had a couple of times where like in a friendly match, it's like YOLO, let's see what Itali finds, and then I find their Novice Inspector in one of my kill spells, and it's like, oh dang it, it's like I should have grabbed Atraxa. But in any event, I think actually the comparison to Titan of Industry feels on point there, honestly, because it's a really, really. When Titan of Industry came out, it was one of the strongest can you imagine that a Standard where we can reanimate this? This is insane. And now, I mean, it's laughable when you compare it to the other things going on. And I don't imagine Vault-Born Tyrant really fitting. The one thing about this though is that it's not legendary, and its ability becomes kind of cumulative. So whenever it or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, gain 3 life, draw a card. And so if I have this down and then I make a copy of it, with our molten duplication, we're in Magical Christmas Land, just go with me on this. If we do manage to copy it, the other one enters, the first one sees it, and you draw 2 cards, gain 6 life, and then if you end up getting more copies, and as as they die, they can come back. Maybe you do some kind of weird sacrifice shenanigans with, those feigned death effects where things come back from the graveyard. Then all of a sudden you can be refilling your hand at a pretty alarming rate. And that's kind of neat. So, I don't know. There's a snowball here that once you get it rolling could be really powerful. Yeah.
Totally. I like your point about the feigned death is really interesting because now you're snowballing that value really quickly. Like Because Traxa's big weakness, of course, the card draw can't be beat. Looking at the top 10, taking X number of cards, nothing touches that. That is always better than everything, like
Phenomenal.
you said. But there are times when they just Doomblade your Atraxa, then kill you. You know what I mean? Or they threaten, they take your Atraxa, they kill you. Like, it's just one creature still. Despite drawing you all these cards, you often are tapping out to get it into play, and then when you do, and they just kill it, and they kill you, you feel like going, God, I have all these cards in my hand, but that's not gonna... so like in Domain and stuff, it's nice because sometimes you can play Atraxa and have that 1 mana up for the ley line, which is so clutch. But a lot of times Atraxa just dies. This dies and makes another body. They can't. It's excellent against sweepers. That said, sun falls everywhere, and this only cares about dying. Not exiling doesn't trigger it. So that's unfortunate. I don't know. I basically think the only... maybe a green-black, like we're cheating, we're blinking things into play deck, or a red-green Dinos deck, a deck that isn't going to play a bunch of colors. They're not reanimating these things. They're just ramping into them or something. With there's a bunch of 2-mana rampers that ramp. A couple of them are specifically dinosaur-related. I can't remember the name of them, but one of them is a 2-drop that taps for any color, and you can pay 2 to exile cards from people's graveyards. That's a very relevant ability right now in Standard. Exiling people's graveyards on your mana dork? That's cool. Scrap Gorger is another one that I think is criminally underplayed in Standard. But maybe a deck like that's really the only place I could see it, because the only other big dinos we really have to ramp into without straying into like 3 or 4 colors is the Tyrannex, right?
Yes.
The 8-drop, or the 8/8 with Toxic and all that, which is not, again, it's a very aggressive card. This is a much better card at stabilizing you than that card.
Yes.
So I could see it. I could see it in that kind of deck. But
Tyrannex as a top end in a ramp shell that is putting pressure on the opponent is great because it just helps you slam the door shut. But exactly, if you're trying to stabilize and if you're in the defensive spot, you tapping out to play a T-Rex and then holding it back to block feels really bad. Whereas, with this, it enters, gains you life, draws you a card. If they kill it, you get to do that again. So, I'm inclined to agree. And I think that's a great shout because, we have the... What is it? Ixani's Lore Keeper, the 1-drop Topiary Stomper, still for a little bit yet. Hulking Raptor. I mean, it's not hard to ramp from, for you ramping up to 7 mana on turn 4 or 5 is not hard in the Dino deck right now. So, I'm inclined to agree.
Now,
Dinos
aren't a deck. That's the thing.
True.
So we're talking a fringe deck here, but maybe the fringe deck picks up enough tools and it can do something. Again, those decks they just fold so badly to sweepers, and 2 of the best decks in the format in Blue-White Control and Domain both play 4 Sunfall. And then they'll often play additional, whether it's a Farewell in Blue-White, or they'll, Depop in the Domain deck, or, other stuff. It's tough. So we'll see. Maybe this sees play in one of those decks, but it's a tough world out there right now. Standard is big. 11 sets big. 11 sets. It's tough to, and I've said this before as well, when they announced the rotation, it's like, okay, well, the bar just keeps going up for what is playable in Standard. So we're talking, this is a very powerful set with tons of rares and mythics, more than your usual sets. And I wonder if we're going to see even, 5 or 6 of them see a ton of play in Standard. I don't know. I know that seems very pessimistic, but like cards like this look awesome. This is an insane card.
It is.
We have Atraxa.
We have Atraxa.
It's like when Legacy and other modern decks, every other old format that's way more powerful than Standard is cheating in the card that we can also cheat in. We probably should just be doing the thing that if it's good enough for that format, it's probably good enough for this.
Exactly.
Choice here.
The fact that decks that have the option of Gristlebrand are choosing Atraxa. It's like, well, that's probably a good indicator that we should probably be going with Atraxa. But so no, I think this card is busted if you're doing Big Timmy nonsense. But Big Timmy nonsense it just doesn't line up well
to do
with what we have in Standard right now. But Commander players though get nasty with this thing. It's going to be ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I like the Feigned Death thing. That would be cool.
It's a fun idea, right?
Cheat this into play.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there. And then, I don't know. I want to do some kind of Jund thing with this, with some kind of duplication, some kind of clone effect. I don't know. There's
the Molten Duplication that you pointed out. That is sweet because the death trigger gets you the other 6/6, right? When it dies.
If it's not a token, when the token dies, you don't get a new one. So
it's not a token.
Yeah. So the clone
that other thing
dying
makes a token.
But when the second one comes in, the first one sees it enter and it triggers, so you're going to draw 2 cards, gain 6. So that's still, I think, worth it. And then if your original Vaultborn Tyrant dies, you know, in combat or whatever, then you do get a new copy. Because that's one of the things when you're doing, you know, the Kiki Jiki action. If you copy, or Delina, Wild Mage, if you're doing that kind of thing, Mirror March, if you're really nasty, if you want to go for it, which, by the way, Mirror March is a 6-drop that mathematically only works half the time. It is the trappiest trap that ever trapped, but good luck out there, everybody who's trying it. I appreciate you. But if you can pull something like that with this, it's going to be nuts. You know, where you can make multiple copies. And one of the downsides to that kind of an effect, when you make the clone copies, if you swing with the original and it dies, you're just never going to do it again. You know, you did the thing once, good job, I guess, that's it. Whereas in this case, if this original dies, you still get a token copy that you could then copy again later, you know, if you still have your clone engine online. So, I don't know. I like the idea of this card a lot. I don't know if it's... I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it looks... I don't know. Again, yeah, it's just the shell that you would have to play to make that good. I'm not sure. I don't see it, but... let me see. Is there anything else that looked good? I haven't seen all of them, but what about this Oltec Matter Weaver?
Ooh.
This thing looks interesting to me. A 3-mana 2/4, so it doesn't die to cut down. Whenever you cast a creature spell, it's 1 white, 2 colorless. Or do you want to read? I don't want to take over.
Oh, either way. No, I'm happy to use it. Oltec Matter Weaver. 2 and a white for a 2/4 human artificer. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose 1. Create a 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature token, or create a token that's a copy of target artifact token you control.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful, right? That pumps out a lot of game objects very quickly. It's a 3-mana 2/4, which is like just like Preacher of the Schism. You do not respect that power and toughness until you have to fight against that card with the removal spells available to you in standard. Things like Cut Down not hitting it, things like Lightning Strike not hitting it, and Lightning Helix, and like a bunch of just and random 3. It blanks Graveyard Trespasser. It blanks like, you know, all these other random 3/4s and other stuff, and you're just like, God, 4 toughness is the sweet spot in a lot of matchups where a bunch of removal doesn't hit it. So a 2/4 for 3 is not aggressive, but definitely an engine in a can. It has very much, for me, Preacher of the Schism vibes, where it's like almost the same casting cost and stats, different color, but army in a can kind of card that can just like by itself pump up. Well, I guess not by itself. That's not true. Preacher is better, but you know, very easy to kind of make any creature spells. Like usually the kind of mid-range decks that would play these kind of cards would be loaded with, like Esper mid-range would, you know, have just tons of creatures. The Esper Legends lists back in the day played 30. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel like it could see a home, but I don't know where. It's weird because when I think white cards, I always think aggressive right now in standard, and that's where white's doing its best work right now in standard is low to the ground, aggressive, 20 lands, you know, let's kill you quick. This is not that. So I don't know. It's interesting. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, it is definitely interesting. I think the benefit or the kind of the question that I'm going to have if I'm considering putting this in my deck is, can I take advantage of the second mode? And also, how often is this actually going to trigger? You know, if my deck only has 12 creatures in it, I'm not interested in this because obviously it's just not going to be triggering enough. But yeah, in a deck that has, you know, 25, 30 creatures, well, then all of a sudden, if you're playing a spell after this, you're going to be getting gnomes at the very least. Yeah, if I have a way to generate token copies of artifacts, and that's the other thing. I think we need to be aware of kind of what generates tokens these days. Like, one of the first things that I think of is reenacted crime. Because when you reenact something, the number of times that I've had opponents, like, choose the wrong mode on Sheoldred's Edict to try to kill my Sphinx that I reenacted, I've seen that happen, and it's wild. They're like, non-token. Wait, it didn't. That's a token. I don't know. Man. Yeah. So, like, that kind of thing. So, if I make, if you reenact a Portal to Phyrexia and then are able to Oltec Matter Weaver and make a copy of it, I mean, that's insane. So... Again, Magical Christmas Land scenario, but at the same time, we're talking about playing a 4-drop into a 3-drop and some kind of creature follow-up. Like, it's not as crazy as it sounds,
And again, like when I'm looking at these cards and I'm trying to evaluate them, I don't think it's useful to think about a very specific deck unless it
Fair.
already exists. If there's an existing deck that a card obviously slots into, then like, when we saw Deep Cavern Bat or Subterranean Schooner or something, it's like, okay, well obviously Esper can just, this is a great 2-drop into Rafine. Any good 2-drop's good with Rafine. So here we go. But like this thing, rather than think about it in a specific shell, I just think of it in terms of like, what is this card doing, and especially in terms of game objects and things. Because remember, in Magic, a copy of a token you control, and making artifact. These are artifact creature tokens. So Oni Cult Anvil is still in the format, or like there's other ways to get value off just pumping out a ton of game objects. You know what I mean? There's obviously things like Mondrak and whatever else, but there's which are not great. They've never been great, right? But I don't know, a card like this that's capable of pumping out a bunch of artifact tokens like very easily. Just all you need to do is put more creatures, which you're already playing usually in decks like this. There was a blue-white artifact kind of control deck very briefly in Standard, popped up and then disappeared. It was kind of it was playing the Glyph Bridge and the Forge, Thousand Moon Smithy, whatever.
Yep.
And this kind of stuff. Making a ton of artifacts really fast can be very scary in decks like that. Like they can, flip that Forge or whatever, or Smithy immediately, and this kind of stuff. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know where it's going to go. I just think I see it and I'm like, oh wow, that's doing something very powerful. It's like Monastery Mentor almost. Like you're making a ton of dudes with just this one card, and then the other cards you already want to put in your deck. So I feel like it could be good, but we'll see.
I'm inclined to agree. And when it comes to that second mode, I think Thousand Moon Smithy and some of those other pieces are clutch, because they make the gnome that has power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control. They're almost like constructs in that regard. If you have that kind of token lying around, being able to make those every time being able to get an additional one of those every time you're casting a creature, holy
cow. Make each other bigger. And,
that could get out of hand fast. So yeah, there are a couple of pieces. If that can become a deck, if that, maybe this will help make that a little more consistent by being just a good threatening 3-drop that the opponent has to respect. And to your point earlier, being 4 toughness, it dodges a ton of removal and can keep you alive. So
yeah, that's the important part too, I think, here, where the ability is good, but also the stats are great. Like they are very solid for Standard. I mean, obviously other formats it's gonna change, but for Standard, that's solid. And I don't know, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if this card saw play in some kind of artifact shell, but.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ones you want to touch on? I've one more I was going to mention, but do you have anything else first?
I can definitely find stuff, but I think I've covered the ones that I definitely wanted to specifically. What else did you have on your mind?
Well, I was just going to say it's weird, but I remember a lot of Magic players following along when they printed the sword cycle. People love the swords, and they keep printing, and then they finish the cycle of swords, right? And now
we're finally done with
another sword. No. Turns out there was one in the vault. It was what's he called? It was Loot's sword, the sword of wealth and power.
Exactly.
Because Loot, the key to everything, would have a sword of wealth and power.
Of course. Yeah.
What do you think of this? So people, again, I'm just bringing it up because it's a sword, and all the swords. People rank the swords. There's like swords that see, So how good is this new sword? It's a sword, so. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know.
Honestly, there's a part of me that kind of, the part of me that is just a smidgen OCD and really likes things neat and orderly. I'm very frustrated that they're continuing, because everything was in a nice little line. We had all 10 swords. Well, like we could be done, but nope, here we are. Yeah, so Sword of Wealth and Power. It plays for 3, equips for 2. Y'all know the drill. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, has protection from instants and sorceries, and then whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token, and then when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, you copy it, and you may choose new targets for the copy. I mean,
protection. Yeah, is that better than color or what?
I don't know.
Is this powerful?
I think it's decent. I know
it can't die to removal, right?
Most removal can't touch it, but that's true. But at the same time, I mean, it can still get. I mean, this protection won't help you in combat most of the time at all. And it actually limits your options as well, because if you have like pump spells, they're not an option. You cannot target your own creature with those. So that's a little PSA for anybody out there with this. Not that pump spells are super popular, but they're out there, and that matters. I don't know. I mean, whenever you can being able to double instants and sorceries, it kind of reminds me of the black blue sword that we got, where if it's like if you have cheap spells in your graveyard, then it's good. It's like that's such a specific.
It's narrow.
It's it's just so narrow compared to some of the others. Like Hearth and Home, it's just like this card's just great, go. And we don't have that here. So I'm not sold on this thing. I fully expect to get bludgeoned by it a few times or slashed up by it a few times on the ladder, but in general, I'm not. I'm not enamored with this. Doubling spells is a powerful effect though. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, it ramps you as well, and then you get to copy the spell, but it's so slow. It's just 3 mana to play and then 2 to equip. Like that's never been good enough. The only time is when you have Stoneforge Mystic and you're flashing it in and stuff. So I don't know. I don't love it either. I think you're right. I think having protection from color also lets you attack unblockable against a lot of decks. Like a sword would come in against the very specific, like a monocolored deck. Against mono red, if I brought in the green red sword to give all my guys pro red, like something like that's very good. But protection from instants and sorceries would be great against like a Rakdos deck playing a ton of spot removal, but
sure,
that doesn't even that's not a deck. Like you're just making up things targets. But
it's so weird to have a sword that will in no way impact like blocking and attacking. That just seems so odd to me because that's just been. When a sword shows up, you have to kind of keep an eye on what color all the creatures are, and now you just don't. And, I don't know. That
seems like Commander. What about Commander? That's what this is for, right? Is this crazy in Commander? I mean, copying. There's some busted stuff you can copy. You still have to cast. Oh, it's the next spell you cast. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, right.
But so if you manage to attack in, well, that actually is a fun little moment though when you attack with this. Maybe if I've got a 5/5 or whatever with this equipped and I'm swinging in, maybe you have a 2/2 and there's this question of, do you chump this or do I have a powerful instant or sorcery in my hand? Am I gonna breach you twice if you give me that treasure and you let this connect, or am I bluffing? And
so wait a minute. So if you cast burn down the house or whatever, this thing has protection from sorceries. It's going to take 0.
Yep.
If you Wrath, it actually doesn't die, right? If it's destroy and not exile, it wouldn't die. It's got protection. No, protection is only damage.
Yep. Right? Protection is damage and target.
Yeah. What am I saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
So no, Wrath's still. Yeah. A Wrath would damage based Wrath. You're good to go. Yeah. So in a deck that cares about in a deck that's running Burn on the House or Brotherhood's End.
Maybe it's
okay. There's some synergy there that could be valuable. So I don't know, maybe
I don't love it. I don't think it's great. I just saw it. I'm like, oh, it's a sword. Holy crap.
It's a sword,
there was a sword in here.
There's actually one other card that I'd like to get your feeling on because that some people are enjoying. It's called Esoteric Duplicator. It's a clue. It's an artifact clue for 2 and a blue. Whenever you sacrifice Esoteric Duplicator or another artifact, you may pay 2. If you do, at the beginning of the next end step, create a token that's a copy of that artifact. And you pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, it has cycling, which is awesome on everything. You just get to cycle it, essentially. Yep. Well, you can't cycle it. I guess it's a lot more than that. It's 5 mana to cycle, but getting to draw is great. But that ability... Another artifact. That's what has my attention. Whenever you sack this, who cares? Whenever you sack another artifact, like every single treasure that I tap, and then I can pay 2. So if I tap, whenever you sack. So you don't have to sack it, you don't have to sack an artifact to this. This will trigger just making mana off a treasure, which of course pays for the activated ability. But then you're not, obviously you have to pay 2 because otherwise you would just be able to generate.
Yeah, it'd go infinite with everything. Yeah.
So what are you copying here that is so good that you can you can sack a treasure to trigger that artifact?
So it's weird because if you sacrifice a treasure, you'd have that mana, but you'd have to pay that mana and 1 more mana, and all you would get is a treasure token. So it's not really worth it. Unless that is triggering something else,
Right. What about again, Oni called Anvil, where you're playing things like Mishra's work or desktop or whatever. Mishra's, the red single colorless like an ETBs.
Yep.
And the other one, there's the one from Kamigawa as well that generates a samurai. Like those 2 artifacts not only sack themselves, they also yeah, one of them you pay extra for the samurai, but you can just sack it and
Yep.
then get a copy, and it ETBs and it exiles the top card, and you get to play it again. But you have to pay two, so you're not able to really do it too many times. It's interesting. This is the kind of card that, yeah, like you could definitely see how this could be broken. I just can't off the top of my head think of artifacts that would break it, but
Hmm.
that's where you gotta, yeah, jump on Scryfall and start searching for stuff.
Yes,
But it is
absolutely.
clunky. Three
A little
mana is
bit.
a lot, but once you have it in play, you don't have to sack this. It just sits there. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, everything else you sack, assuming you're playing a bunch of other artifacts that sack things, or Oni Cult Anvil sacking things, getting another copy of them. That is super busted. And Oni Cult, I mean, is red black, but we did flirt with Grixis Oni Cult right when Brothers War came out and Saheeli dropped.
Hmm.
People were I thought it was one of the best decks in Standard for about a week, and then Grixis just started playing Brotherhood's End, and the Oni Cult deck just can't beat
Yeah.
that card. So that deck never surfaced again, but it's a very powerful engine. Everybody knows it exists in Standard. I wonder
Hmm.
if Grixis Oni Cult could do something with this. Outside of that, it's
Yeah.
tough to say, but yeah.
No, I think you might be right. And yeah, the what is it? Yeah, the synthesizer and some of those other pieces that we've
Yeah,
seen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that and with because that also you got the that's the surge, the spell where you could sacrifice, it's kind of the quasi
Yeah,
shrapnel blast, the shock with the like kicker of sacrificing an artifact. That's a great
that
way to
card's
sack artifacts.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Voltage Surge.
Vulture
Yeah,
Surge, that's
very
the one. Yeah, yeah,
underplayed
yeah.
card.
Yeah, so anything that can sacrifice for free. If you're
Right.
sacrificing things for free to get value, paying an additional mana and just effectively getting the thing back is pretty
Hmm.
fantastic. And if you're in a more controlling deck, if you've got mana available at the end of your turn, you can pay two, sacrifice this, pay an additional two, and you just get a token copy of it back,
Oh
and
yeah,
you've drawn a
right.
card. It's expensive, but you can do that
Hmm.
turn over turn because you can do all of this at instant speed. So it's
Interesting.
it's a little slow, but
Yeah,
there's
you're
something
right.
here. Yeah,
Very cool. Yeah, it's a little
yeah.
clunky, but because again, in those kind of decks, all the pieces are there to do damage or make creatures.
Hmm.
But there are a couple draw pieces, like again, well, the thing you mentioned there, but the synthesizer and the Mishra's desktop, but or work desk or whatever it is. Those
Yeah.
kind of artifacts are there to draw more cards, but they're also artifacts themselves, which kind of plays into the main plan. This
Hmm.
does do that. But that deck is very low curve. I'm just wondering if three is too much, but I could see it. And with Saheeli and other stuff, yeah.
And I'm also realizing this creates a token copy of the artifact that you sacrifice, which you could then copy with the other creature that we talked about. I don't know if a shell
Yeah,
where we
right.
have Azorius, as well
Hmm.
as some kind of sacrifice effect. I don't know if that exists, but
That would be crazy.
there's
Blue
some
red
cool synergy here.
artifacts or
Yeah.
yeah, Grixis artifacts with the molten duplication, and then that thing dies, and when it dies, you pay two and you get a permanent copy of it that doesn't die after that. Like start doing stuff like that is pretty ridiculous, right?
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Oh, you're
yeah,
right. Because with the molten
the
duplication.
that would only apply to the token that came into play. If you molten duplication something and then it dies with that esoteric artifact in play, you
Hmm.
pay two, so essentially four mana. You two for molten duplication, anything on the board, and then two to copy it when it dies, and then you get that thing permanently because it would lose the sacrifice at the beginning of next end step clause. The
Right.
copy would not have. So yeah, you can, and again, these cards are all cheap enough. Spirebluff Canal, remember, is in the format. You can do a
Hmm.
Grixis shell now, and the mana's good. And it's just tricky because again, all this stuff has to be low curve, but it is. The only thing that isn't is that esoteric blue artifact we're talking about here,
Hmm.
esoteric duplicator. Like you might say, what do you mean three? Like three's not expensive. Well, for that deck, yeah, like
Kinda.
everything else is
Yeah.
two or less, and it plays like 20 lands, 21 lands. So
Hmm.
this is like almost like it'll play a Sholdred or whatever. Sometimes it's not like Boros aggro, but anyway, it's interesting. I wonder if there's something there.
I'm wondering if we might have a quasi three blind mice situation on our hands. So uh because we had the creature that creates the ultimate matter weaver, right? So we
Yeah,
have the matter weaver. The molten duplication creates a copy of a creature or an artifact, and the copy is an artifact even if the original was not.
right,
So if we molten duplicate the matter weaver, we get a token matter weaver.
right.
It dies. We pay the two for the duplicator, get a copy of it. We now have a token copy of it. And that token copy is an artifact, if I'm not mistaken, because the thing
It
that we sacrificed was. Well, so now, if we cast out any
copies.
other creatures, we copy the the Matter Weaver. And we can make multiple copies of the Matter Weaver, all of whom trigger off of each one. So it's probably too cute. It reminds me very much of the Three Blind Mice, you know, what is it? The Tameo, you make a token copy, make a million mice. But it reminds me of that.
It's possible. And again, one of the reasons... no, you should. One of the reasons it's not, I don't know if it's going to be amazing, but at least it's viable, it's possible, is because all of these cards are cheap enough, A. B, they're all single-colored mana. And C, we have mana fixing that's good enough now with the fast lands that you could play Jeskai Duplicator, you could play Grixis Duplicator, because we have Spire Bluff, we have, the white-red one. So, yeah, like, I think it's definitely something you could do. Is it going to be great? Does it all come together? Does it get wrecked by... I don't know. There's no Shatterstorm effects, so I don't know. Maybe, but it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see something like that come together. That would be hilarious. But,
yeah, why not, right? I'll give it a shot. I'm going to probably get dunked on, but it could be fun. And fun fact, that combo that we're discussing is all available within the same boosters. Now, this is all the big score sheet, especially. But so the chances of opening this in, say, like a sealed pool is incredibly low, but not impossible. So keep an eye out. And I honestly, the amount of text that is in the cards from this set in general is just through the roof. And so what I would recommend for anybody out there, when you're drafting, when you go to pre-release, whenever you're doing this stuff, keep an eye out for synergies and keep an eye out for combos, because they exist within this set. Yeah, it's going to be nuts.
Tons of build-arounds. Yeah,
oh my
lots
goodness.
of build-around engine-y kind of cards. Even Karlov Manor felt like that too. It felt there were a lot of like these build-around engine-y cards that are really interesting. Yeah, it's going to be a spicy set. There's a lot of powerful cards. Again, we'll see what happens with the prices of these cards in real life. I hope again that some of these mythics aren't standard 4-ofs and stuff like that. That's really the reason that standard is so expensive, because you need multiple copies. Commander, some of these singles get pricey, but you only ever need one. You can share them among 3 or 4 commander decks. You just swap them in and out. I used to do that all the time in my decks. So but standard, you gotta play 4. You can't be swapping things out. You gotta have the full 4 copies. And so if one of these mythics is a 4-of in a tier 1 deck in standard, I would not be surprised to see whatever it happens to be. I don't know which one of these cards, if any. Maybe there's none. Maybe this whole thing is silly and I'm worrying for nothing, but it's playing with fire as far as I'm concerned. It's really like we know what happened. We saw what happened with Nexus. It was an absolute gong show. And of course, they had to ban it after. So there were people who paid a lot of money for that stuff. Jace 2, Jace the Mind Sculptor. Imagine paying $100 a pop, 400 for your Jaces, and they ban it in a couple of weeks, and you're like, oh my god. So I hope they, not bannings aside, that's a rare occasion. But having a card in this list be busted is not that rare or not that unlikely. It could happen, and if it does, I hope things don't get crazy. We'll see. Because I want people to play standard. I want people to play competitive Magic. I want RCQs are back. RCs, they're pushing for this, right? They changed the rotation. Like, it would really suck if they tried to do a good thing here. I think that's why they changed one of the common slots. They said you have a 20% chance now to get a rare in the common slot, unlike all the other sets. So there's this tiny little bump that, okay, we get a little bit higher chance to get a rare, but it could be anything, any card from the list. So it could be just, it could be a special guest. All this stuff. So we'll see how it pans out. I'm looking forward to playing the set, but I'm not looking forward to the people playing in real life and hearing the stories of how much people are paying. I don't know. We'll see.
Oof. Yeah, well, we'll definitely see. I'm interested to see how it shakes out too. Because given what we have here, I would not be surprised. That's the thing. A lot of these cards, so many of them, like almost a large portion of the rares from this set, regardless of what sheet you're looking at, rares or mythics, if the right conditions are met, if the right meta exists, if there's a deck that it can slot into, it's going to be insane. That's true of a lot of these cards. Now, those decks generally don't exist right now, and I don't know that we're gonna get any new decks per se coming out of this one. I don't know, we'll see. I don't know that we have a Mosswood Dread Knight, Restless Cottage kind of situation where all of a sudden a new archetype can just pop up because this exists. I hope so. Hopefully something to rise to the top. We'll see. But I haven't seen anything yet that I think is really going to drive it home.
Spire Bluff. That's my prediction. Spire Bluff Canal is the one that's going to put a new deck on the map. Blue-red something. Blue-red Tempo, Blue-red Pirates, Blue-red Artifacts, Low to the Ground, Blue-red Spells, deck. We all know what they look like. Something like that. That's my prediction. But,
we're in a standard where Delver of Secrets is legal. So, I mean,
that's right. I forgot.
We have Delver and Monastery Swiftspear. Like, there's got to be something here. Like, somebody. And we have cards like Balmor and the Third Path Iconoclast. I mean, there's some good stuff. So, there's got to be something there. Something.
It's crazy. I've never thought about that. You're right. Like, back in the day, we were playing with Delver and Monastery Swiftspear in Standard, and neither of them see any play.
Yeah. We've had Delver of Secrets for almost 3 years, and it's just like, fine, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Monastery sees a little bit of play in this blue-white Jin Monastery Mentor deck, but it's not a tier 1 deck, and it's just a fringe, tier 2 deck. So it's really weird when you think about it, right? I mean, a power creep and just set design and things changing. But hey, the bat is busted. The Preacher of the Schism is ridiculous. Like, they've printed some super powerful cards in the last couple of years. So I'm not surprised Monastery Mentor and Delver take a back seat to that stuff. But we'll see. Maybe some more bangers in this one. But I think the lands are a big pickup. But other than that, it's almost impossible to say. Like you said, who knows? Maybe a new deck shows up. Maybe none do. We'll see. Maybe just stuff in existing archetypes. Standard is so tuned and so big right now. It's tough to break in, right?
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and with the domain getting 50 mana worth of stuff by turn 5, and you got or you have the Esper decks just getting perfect card selection and just putting more power online in those early turns than a lot of other decks can handle. I mean, the decks right now that we have are kind of the apex of what they could be, and so I think you're exactly right. Breaking in is going to be tough, but I'm hopeful we see something. I mean, the numbers are looking pushed. It looks like we're getting more for less. So
you're right.
There's a possibility.
There's a lot of juice.
There's a lot of juice.
People can squeeze it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I got you. Absolutely.
Let's see if we can do something with all that juice. We're gonna drink it.
Yes. All right. But yeah, so if we don't have any other juice to discuss, I think this is a fun look at the big score kind of sheet. There's a ton more that we haven't touched on all the spoilers for Thunder Junction. There's a good chance that we're going to be discussing those in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. Feel free to drop a follow, like, subscribe, whatever it's called on your podcast app of choice at home, so that you can stay in touch with all of that. Because as this develops, as Standard evolves, coming with this set being introduced, we're definitely going to be chatting about it and seeing how things shake out and talking about overperformers, underperformers, and what we expect to see moving forward. So you're definitely going to want to stick around for all of that. And before we bid everyone a very fond adieu, Damien, where can people find you out there on the interwebs?
On Twitch 6 days a week, baby. Damien F16 on Twitch, Damien F16 on YouTube, dropping daily content on YouTube, writing articles over at mtgcircle.com, along with you, Ham, and Numbskull, which is awesome. And it's a great piece of software. People should check out CardFlow on the MTG Circle site. But anyway, that's where my articles are. YouTube, Twitch, Damien F16, and you can come hang out, play some Magic. How about you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm also writing articles over on MTG Circle. They are a ton of fun. I generally look at like weird brews and try to that I've been experimenting with and kind of break down my thought process and talk through them. That or when it's spoiler season, just holy cow spoilers. But yeah, that's over on MTG Circle. And yeah, there's some cool applications, some really cool stuff happening over there. So definitely check that out. And you can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/hamhawks42. I'm streaming over there 5 days a week, and I'm also putting out stuff on the YouTubes, TikToks, all that happy jazz. Doing comedy shorts, trying to get in on that, and nice. that it's been a fun journey.
On YouTube or
on
where?
YouTube, yeah.
I have to see some of these. Oh,
yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm doing a series called Sell Me This Card, where I have a businessman character named Piggy Banks, and I pitch him different cards, and it's a way of just distilling like my take on a card down to like 45 seconds and add a joke into it. It's
awesome.
It's silly, but it's been a lot of fun. So yeah.
Great.
So yeah, I've been doing those. So if that's of interest, come find me at all the places on Twitter and TikTok. It is at Hawks42. Otherwise, Hammox42 in all the various places. The link tree is available, by the way, also in the description. You can find Damien's links down there as well, along with other members of the team. So definitely go hit those up. They're all amazing, lovely people. And yeah, with that, I think the time has come to bid you all a very fond adieu. Thank you for joining us as we score big with this big score, sheet. Is it a bonus sheet? Mini set?
I don't know. Some people are going to score big, though. I know that because you might have a chance to rip a very expensive card in a couple months, like a $100 card. Who knows in standard? So some people are going to definitely have some big scores in this set. We'll see.
Hang on to the big scores. Whatever cards you get, hang on to them and see what happens. Give it a few weeks and see, because there's a good chance. All right. Well, with that, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one. Later.
Bye.